Awesome. Hey, so I promised a Davinci Resolve tutorial like a billion years ago, and I just had a bunch of my files get deleted, so I'm going to show you now. Hopefully I can get it done in one take. So, step one is to get Davinci Resolve itself. So type in Davinci Resolve, click the link, go to Blackmagic's page, scroll down to the bottom. You'll see the three types of Davinci Resolve. There's the one that comes with the control panel, the one that's just the software, and the one that's free. You want the one that's free, unless you have $1,000, then buy that one. So choose your operating system. I choose Windows, because I'm Windows. Choose your product. You want Davinci Resolve, and then finally choose Lights. You're going to search, and you'll have this little download icon. Click that, and you're good to go. If you want, you can get the manual, etc. But I didn't, because I'm ballsy. Next, you open up Davinci Resolve. Resolve works with a user setup program, which is a little bit weird, but whatever, I go with it. So, I've already made my profile. You can use admin or guest if you want, but I just used my own. You can click down here and make one. I didn't take a photo. Oh well. So, type the password in, you're good to go. I have a whole bunch of projects here, some various stuff that I've been working on. You can see a couple times that I've tried to make this tutorial. But yeah, so you can always just hit the plus button down here to create a new project. I'm just going to open up one that I already had. Oh, but this one has lost its footage, so I'm actually going to make a new project. This is going to be tutorial 3. So, once you create a new project, first things first is learn how to get footage into Resolve. So what you're going to want to do is set up your libraries. Mine are already set up because I've already used them, but if they're not, you go into Preferences, go from System Overview to Media Storage, and you'll have, I think, one drive in here. You'll have the C drive if you're on Windows, and probably just the hard disk if you're in Mac. So what you do is I use the minus button to delete whatever is there, and you use the plus button and just navigate it to where the footage is. On my system, I have footage set up in a couple ways. I have this thingy right here, this big fancy media disk. It just holds all of my footage. And then normally I have a backup, which is turned off right now, but that's the Z drive. Hey, sorry about that. Alright, so what happens was I just had the media in my offline drive, so I just turned it on, so now we can now find the media. Let's go into tutorial 3. And now I'm going to navigate to the media again. See, I have the color corrected shot down here, which I don't want. I want the gross version. So I'm going to show you how to fix it. And that is all, I believe. So, we don't need to conform any footage because it is all the same type of media. It's all shot on either my 7D or a T2i, which use the same codecs and the same sensor. So, that's okay. So we'll go straight to color. In the color page, you have basically the bread and butter that is Davinci Resolve. You have your source monitor, your scopes. Normally this is the gallery, but since I can only record on one monitor at a time, normally I have my scopes on my second or third monitor, but they're just going to be over top of the gallery for now because we won't be using the gallery. You have your nodes, which, since Davinci Resolve is a node-based editor, you have your node graph up here. You have your timeline down here, which is a mix of a timeline, so you can scroll through it if your clips are in order. Say at the very end if you're editing an already cut film. Or you can just go through them clip by clip, which is what we'll be doing today because we're just editing a couple of clips. Now you have your color wheels down here. Originally it's set to 3-way color, but you'll find that log color correcting is way better. You'll have your curves graphs here in case you want to, I don't know, S-curve things. And then we probably won't do any keyframe stuff, but it will be down here. Cool. So, first things first,
is, I guess, explaining nodes. The way nodes work is they're essentially, it's like when you're using Photoshop or Premiere or something, you can hit Control Z and it will go back to your previous change or action. What nodes are is they're just a way of you yourself controlling the changes you make instead of just letting it list it all at once. So, long story short, whenever you go to make a change, you just hit make a new node. I use Alt S. You can also right click, new node, or just make a new serial node from up there. But I'll get into that in a second. But the main thing is scopes. So, I've already actually played with this a little bit. The original image looks like that. So, make the scopes a little bit bigger so that everyone can see what we're talking about. So, this is our graph. Basically, it goes through the roughly 10 stops of dynamic range. But what we're looking for is actual image data. So we'll see in this shot that all this stuff back here is overexposed, which means that we've lost that data. And you can see that here in the scopes themselves, is that they're all being cut off at the top. Normally this waveform would have some jags and stuff, depending on the different waves of the curtains, etc. But unfortunately, since this is overexposed, we've lost all this data. I can still shift it down to lower the exposure of the image, but all of this pure white will always stay pure white because that's the only information we have. This is the sort of thing that Davinci Resolve can't fix, and it's why, even though if you are color correcting, you still have to pay attention to what you're shooting, because this image can't actually be corrected that much. One thing that is good about it, though, is that it has a huge dynamic range. You have lots of darks and lots of brights. What could have been done is it could have been shifted down, and we would have lost the blacks down here. You see them getting cut off, but you could lose some texture in the suit and regain almost an entire stop of texture in the curtains, which would have been nice. Anyways, so that's the basically dark to bright nature of scopes. The other nature of scopes is this is the parade, by the way. It's the most useful one. Is color, making sure your channels are correct. Now you'll see that this is obviously improperly white balanced. Now this particular one wasn't the camera operator's fault. It's just that DSLRs in combined lighting situations or in dark light can't figure out what or how to properly color balance. So we kind of had to do it ourselves in post. So you'll see that the reds are way overrepresented and the blues are way underrepresented. There is one point that's properly color balanced, which is this window right here, which is probably what the camera was looking at when it decided the white balance. Is there's this one point, and that must have been what the camera considered. A properly white balanced image, like this one, has all three parades looking basically identical. A poorly color balanced one has all three looking different. So what our job to do would be to make them look closer to the same. Now, of course, the most important thing is that it looks similar to what you actually saw that day. But I'm pretty sure this is kind of accurate, if I remember correctly. Now the blues are lower. You know, technically having them all look the same would be closer to this. But I don't think it was that blue when I was there. Could be wrong. But I don't think it was that blue. So basically, that's what you want it to look like. Now, how to actually make those changes is all done with these. So you have basically 3 lines of corrections. First of all, you have like the shadows, which obviously tints the shadows, the midtones, which tints the midtones, and the highlights that tint the highlights.
What the offset does is just shifts everything in a certain direction. You saw me, down here is the exposure, so you saw me just shift the exposure up or down before when we were looking at different exposures. What the shadows does is it just boosts the exposure of the shadows, or let me just get this right back to where it was, or you can boost the midtones, or of course the highlights. This lower dictates the range. So what this says is that shadows are anything lower than 333 or 0.333 stops. So that's considered shadows. What you can do is shift that up. So now anything above or anything below almost 600 is considered a shadow. Now you see some changes happening, but those are just because we've changed the shadows. And now those changes are being applied to more. The highlights are obviously the same thing, and the mid-range is just anything between these two numbers. Contrast is pretty straightforward. Although one thing to keep in mind is that there are better ways to control contrast, and then saturation's here as well, and there are also better places to control that. The pivot point of the contrast, basically contrast just stretches everything outwards. The pivot point says where you want it to be stretched out from. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Overall, Davinci Resolve is not a difficult program to use by any means, that's really the bulk of what you're going to do. To put it in kind of a linear time progression format is you have your first node, and what I do, so this is what we started with. I just made a new node, then deleted the first node. So the first thing you would do is you would take basically your ingested footage, which is this, and from here you would make your color corrections. Trying to kind of make things look right, but not doing an awesome job. And then from there you add a new node, basically because you color corrected. That's step 1. So now you want to create a new node so that anything that this node does simply affects the color corrected. And this is where you would add like basically you'd be adding your grade. If you're looking for a certain look for the piece, this is where you throw it on. You wouldn't put it on the same node as your color correction, because if you did, then it would be bad. That's the basics of Davinci Resolve. One more thing, to get it out of Davinci Resolve. So what you're going to do is you're probably going to use Final Cut Pro XML. And then leave basically everything as it is. The only one thing you should think of is if you want to render each clip individually, which we would want to do in this case because we have 3 individual clips. Or if it's an entire film, you can uncheck that and just have the entire film edited out. Yeah, that's basically, long story short, you add the job. It wants me to choose a place to render it to. So we'll just render it straight to the E drive. So, yeah. So you add the job, and then you just hit render. And from there you're good to go. hopefully I will soon be uploading another tutorial about how to use the other elements, not just general color correction, like the power window, which I showed quickly here, as well as tracking and that sort of stuff.